In the world of business, it's often difficult to identify the specific ingredients for success. Take Apple and Microsoft, for example. Apple's been able to pull itself back from the brink to become the world's most valuable company, while Microsoft is now falling far behind the pack. Richard Rumelt is a professor of business strategy at UCLA. In his latest book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, he looks at how businesses fail to implement coherent plans to optimise and build on their successes. I caught up with Richard Rumelt while he was in Sydney. Richard Rumelt, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Whitney.
Now, when it comes to being strategic in business, what are many getting wrong?
Most companies, what they get wrong about strategy is they treat it as an activity about the far future. They treat it as a long list of all the things that are going on in the world and which ones and all the different options they might take. But you have to pare it down to what you're actually going to do. And because they don't do that, they will often say, oh, there's a big gap between strategy and execution. Now, there isn't really a gap. What they've got is a bad strategy.
You argue that a coherent strategy can oftentimes amount to competitive advantage. It appears on the face of it to be quite common sense. So why is that such a mystery?
Well, that's a good question. The thing about strategy is it's surprising when we see it. We don't expect strategy. We expect large organizations, governments, to pursue multiple conflicting goals that don't add up, to try to punch the ticket of all stakeholders. That's what we expect. And when an organization doesn't do it, when it takes this off the table, and drives through to, and we say, oh my God, that's surprising. They actually have a strategy. You know, it's what appalls everybody about Apple because, you know, it's not a particularly well-managed firm, but the ferocity of its focus. And just look at its product line. It has one phone. And look at the competing product lines. They're all over the place. And so this idea of not doing everything, but doing something with great force and great skill, wow, that's strategy.
Well, that's an interesting point that you mentioned, Apple, because I did want to talk about them. This is a company that, was on the brink of extinction and then basically, pulled itself out. It was not only able to innovate, but it was also to ride the wave of change. What did they do differently? Well,
when Steve Jobs took over in 1996, the second time he was involved in the company, it was 2 months from bankruptcy. He was encouraged by Wall Street to do a deal, sell Apple to Sony, sell it to IBM, sell it to somebody. The tech people thought, well, he was going to invent something, voice recognition, which still isn't quite there, and so on. And he didn't do any of that. What he did was Business 101, which was surprising because no one thought of him as an astute business person. And he cut the 15 models they had down to 1. He dropped all the printers and peripherals. He got rid of half their software engineers. He got rid of half their hardware engineers. He moved all the manufacturing to Taiwan. He did what needed to be done, and he did it with force and total cohesion. He cut the company back to a core that could survive.
He also had the courage to innovate as well.
Oh, yeah. So then, what did he do next? And at the time, as I say in my book, I met him and I said, well, okay, you've saved the company, but what next? And he said, I'm going to wait for the next big thing. And for him, the next big thing was iPod, iPhone, iPad. And these things, even today, people don't quite fully understand what's the logic there. Well, they're all mobile. But the logic is it's his world. It's not Intel chips. It's not Microsoft operating system. Because it's mobile and because it's a whole environment that he controls. He got out from under being the 4% market share guy in the personal computer world and into a place where he could lead.
Do you think that there is a lack of vision and also a lack of strong business leaders throughout the world, not just in specific countries, United States, Europe, Australia, but all throughout the world?
I think that when you see entrepreneurs build firms and take them from small to large, it's always, we're proud of them, we're interested in them. They don't like vision. If they like vision, it wouldn't happen. At some point, that firm, and all its complexity, gets handed to, no matter how smart the person is, a hired manager who sort of at some level doesn't understand all the nooks and crannies and doesn't have that intensity of focus on what's happening to my firm.
Well, I guess that's the question then. When you, if an entrepreneur comes up with an idea, builds a business, it becomes this massive monolith, such as Apple, you need to have those management strategies in there. But, of course, by their very nature, they're very kind of formulaic, and they can breed a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. How do you combat that?
Apple, like a Disney, like a Singer sewing machine, like so many other firms that have gone from nowhere to dominance over the past 100 years, will enact the image of Steve Jobs long as he's passed. They will ask themselves, what would Steve do? And as long as that's the right answer, they'll continue to do it that way. And then there'll come a point when it's not the right answer anymore, and you'll need some new leadership that not only can do what Steve would have done, but can do something different, something else. And then you have a break. Then you have the IBM having to take a guy like Lou Gerstner and make a right turn and do something different. Or Disney, another famous example, having to do something different than just what would Walt have done, which they still say, but it's not exactly the same. And typically firms don't change their ways until they hit a blockage. One of the reasons that Jack Welch got so much attention is because GE hadn't hit a blockage. And he decided to change the firm absent a crisis. And that's remarkable. We don't see that very often.
Richard Rumelt, thanks for joining the program.
Whitney, thank you for having me.